It's very frustrating. I tried to get a job on Wall Street back in the day, back when I was a Tesla bull, and I would like, I made a detailed research report about the company, and I would go to like Morgan Stanley or these big companies, and I'd say like, oh wow, like I think that I could be a stock analyst for your company, and like they would just look at me like I'm insane or something like that. They don't have, but they don't have they don't have the incentive to actually do the job. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm pleasantly surprised you said that because and for the record, I've not heard you say that before, but that's exactly my thought too. I think the reason, not just traditional finance, banking, whatever, I think the reason humans tend to miss these things is because we don't have the incentive to consider the other side. So, like with 2008 being the example, I think the reason why so many people missed it is because everyone had the incentive to assume the housing bubble would just continue.
yeah,
All of the rating agencies were misleading the public with the safety of these subprime loans because it was in their incentive. If they didn't continue that, their business would just go elsewhere. And
yeah,
likewise, Wall Street had the incentive to continue saying the housing market was fine because they don't have any incentive to say anything else. Same thing with the government, same thing with every single American that bought a home with a mortgage, even without a mortgage. Literally everyone, from the
yeah,
very top to the very bottom, was incentivized to believe one worldview. And so the other
yeah,
worldview was, even if it wasn't guaranteed, the probability of it happening was under accounted for by a factor of 100. And I think like with Tesla here, I think it's the same thing
yeah,
that, and with Bitcoin, not to transition too far to the conversation, but that's what I tell people is that it's like, I don't know about Bitcoin. I'm not sure about this Bitcoin thing, but I am sure 100% that of the different two probabilities, either Bitcoin is global money or it's a nothing. It's
yeah,
nothing at all, a scam, a nothing burger, a Ponzi, whatever. It's like I know this argument is being undervalued by a factor of 50, 100, 1,000, maybe even more.
yeah,
And even if it doesn't, even if even if that's not the probability that manifests, the probability is significantly higher than what the market thinks. So anyway, that's kind of how I think, and that's how
yeah,
I have so much conviction in just holding Bitcoin because I know that even
yeah,
if this thing is a 1% chance that the market is just completely sleeping on it because nobody has the incentive to. Financial planners don't have the incentive for Bitcoin to win. Banks don't have the incentive for banks. Banks don't have the incentive for Bitcoin to win. Governments don't have the incentive. The media doesn't have the incentive. Most financial analysis folks don't have the incentive to win. So that's kind of how I think about it.
mhm.
Um, what are some of those examples with Tesla? Like, why would people in the past not have the incentive to give Tesla, the company, the benefit of the doubt? And why today are people not giving Bitcoin the benefit of the doubt of actually considering it? What do you think those specific reasons are?
I think a lot of it's what you said about. Um, I think the biggest part is honestly people don't know. Um, if you think through a lot of things, which I like to do, I think through. I write about things before I like make an investment, and if you think through, like say for example, the probabilities of Bitcoin either going to zero or becoming like the world's reserve asset, the number one reserve asset. If you think through the possibilities of that, there's and you actually do an honest analysis of what you're looking at, there's almost no way to kill Bitcoin. You can for Bitcoin as an example, you can drop the price, you can affect the price on the short term. There's no way you can kill the assets, no way you can stop it. It's just built on a system of incentives. It's almost like we're working for Bitcoin. The incentives of Bitcoin are just going to ensure that the asset is just going to continually rise in price. Um, so yeah,
Why is that? Why is that? I know that, I fully agree with that,
yeah,
but could you explain why that's the case? Because I think a lot of people, like you said, they don't know. Some people are incentivized not to understand that. I think other people simply don't understand what you just said. If you could give a little overview of why that risk of it going to zero is so low.
yeah. There's a fixed supply of this asset that it can only be invented once. Something you'd have to people have to take time to learn for themselves. They can only be invented one time. Um, there's there's no way to hack the system. So that's a common question. People think that there's a way to hack the system. And so, uh, sorry, I'm getting off topic of your question. I'm sorry, I keep going off topic of your question. What was your exact question? And I'll get to that.
Yeah. I was asking what first. I was asking what are those reasons why people are not giving it the benefit of the doubt, and then specifically, I was asking you to clarify why you were saying the two probabilities of either it goes away or
Oh,
becomes a reserve asset. Why
yeah.
why is that the case? Why is it so hard to kill as an asset?
Okay, yeah. So the benefit of the doubt part, I think the world is just long a lot of real estate and long a lot of bonds and long a lot of stocks and long a lot of investments that aren't Bitcoin. So the incentive for like the real estate holder or the bond holder is uh, to protect their investment, not this new thing. So you have the vast like 99.98% of the world's assets in other things that um, they'd rather not see Bitcoin to see because that means that their bags won't pump. So um, I think that's probably the biggest reason why. It's just this unique time in history that we're in. We're just Bitcoin is super small relative to everything else. So um, the real estate maxis are way more prevalent than the Bitcoin maxis, even though we know that we're holding the superior asset. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest reason why. I think there's a lot of like humans have like what they call like logical fallacies that they fall into, where they think that the past is going to be somewhat like is what the future is going to hold. So I think there's a lot of that. People just aren't humans in general just aren't equipped to deal with change, especially rapid change or a whole new thing. So I think it's a lot of it's just human nature in that way. And like the humans that will aggregate to an investment early, like Tesla, or investment like if you call it an investment, Bitcoin, kind of don't are the ones that didn't fall for the logical fallacies that exist with most people. Um, so yeah. So yeah. Thinking through it, there's pretty much like when I first started investing and buying Bitcoin, I would think that there's like maybe a 1% chance that this thing will succeed, and I would weight my portfolio with like 1% of Bitcoin because like there there's 99% chance this thing fails, but if it works, it'll work really big. You go deeper down the rabbit hole, and then you go through all the scenarios of what can stop Bitcoin, and I don't want to sound like a naive, like millennial person, but I've thought about this for a
Hey
lot of
now,
years.
hey
I
now.
thought, yeah, I've thought about it for a lot of years, and uh, there's not much that can kill it outside of some fatal software bug, which is unlikely because it's just such an audited code base, and it's very simple, unlike like an altcoin like Ethereum or something like that. It's very simple code. So I think that the chances of that are unlikely. And um, I'm not upgrading my nodes, so I'm not changing the software. Uh, so yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I just is there's just no, maybe a solar flare comes and knocks out the world's internet, and but in that case, I think that Bitcoin is the least of our problems anyway. You know, it's just probability. It's
Yeah,
more likely going to go to like 20 million than it is going to go to zero. Way more likely.
it's way more likely Bitcoin goes to 20 million US than zero.
Way more likely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I would argue at least, let's say 50 times more likely, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just absurd. So as much as I'd love to expand on that more, I'd love to hear more about the paradigm shifts, like you were saying, because I think ultimately, before we could talk about, oh, Bitcoin's going to millions of dollars for people to understand, I think it's perhaps more helpful for people to understand the paradigm shift. And that's another reason why I find your story with Tesla fascinating, is because like you just said a minute ago, and like I say on Twitter all the time, uh, future changes are increasingly difficult for our brains to wrap around. And the thing that I've said online is that we have less in common with the future than the past, and every iteration of time has more change than the previous one. So it only will get harder for us to keep up, which is which has trade-offs. There are beautiful things to that. There are terrifying things about that. But specifically with Tesla, I think about how, at least for my observation, not nearly as in-depth as you in their reporting and following them and everything, but I see clearly how 10 years ago Tesla was this tiny little corner. And now we're at the point where traditional automakers are already borderline capitulating into Tesla's
Mhm.
business model. And in 5 years, from my amateur analysis compared to yours, it's like I don't know what these traditional automakers are going to do in 5 years.
Mhm.
Ford, GM, Toyota, like I don't know how the money works unless they get massive stimulus. It just seems like they're going to get completely gutted in the next
Mhm.
few years as EVs and these kind. And it's not just about, oh, EVs better or more moral than gasoline. I think that's actually overrated, but it's all the other things that Tesla's cars are doing specifically. But anyway, I'm kind of answering my own question, but I'd love to hear you talk about that, about how do these traditional technology companies, because cars are just a form of technology. These traditional technology companies that made ICE motors of cars are now being displaced by this new technology, and it's happening so fast that they can't profitably transition over, and they might just go
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
If you could elaborate that more, I'd love to hear because you know.
Yeah. So I can make a prediction.
I'm glad you're taking Bitcoin seriously. You all should be taking your self custody seriously. Where are you storing your seed phrase? Is it on a piece of paper? Is it on a sticky note? Or are you doing the right thing and putting it on a metal plate? My friends over at Steed Stamp are sponsoring part of this video, and on their behalf, I'm here to tell you that they have a really good product for stamping your seed phrase on a durable piece of metal that you can keep over the long term. This prevents against your seed phrase getting lost due to water damage, fire damage, and frankly, it makes it a little more weighty and makes it a little more difficult to lose track of. And it's better psychologically for peace of mind with having it on something that you know is not just going to last as long as a piece of paper, but it's going to last indefinitely. So if your Bitcoin time horizon is for the long term and your time horizon for your seed phrase is for the long term, I highly encourage you check out Stamp Seed with their high quality experience in having Bitcoin seed plates for you. So go to the website. You can use my discount code in the description where you can get a discount off of your order of Stamp seed plates. So it's a great company. You can get a great discount. Check out the link in the
For GM and Ford, probably GM because they have the most debt. Um, 2008, GM was bailed out by the Fed. Um, and if we enter another recession, which I think we're likely to enter a recession soon, I think that most likely GM and probably Ford, especially just because they didn't accept a bailout, and because of that, they're in a worse financial position than GM. Uh, I think most likely they're going to need another bailout, which is going to be a really interesting time. Like, will the taxpayer bail out GM a second time? Because the next recession could come at like a terrible time for them because Tesla's got the Model Y, the Cybertruck, which is coming out in a few months, which I think is going to sell like bonkers. So um, a huge portion of Ford's and GM business is selling F-150s and Silverados. I think it's going to eat a lot of their business, their most profitable business, at a time that the economy is going into and hold it in a recession. So it'll be really interesting. What will happen? They're going to lose profits from them. They're going to have to drop prices to compete with the Cybertruck on their most profitable vehicles at a time the economy is going into recession, at a time when Tesla's still rapidly scaling their production. Um, I don't think the outlook is very good for those companies. They might consolidate their brands and get bought out by or consolidate into like one like company, like Ford and GM or something like that. But I don't, I don't think that they have much of a chance of survival. The automotive business is so tough. When times are going good, but since they have huge factories, they have huge operating costs to these factories, so they're really sensitive businesses, especially when you add on the debt. They're very sensitive businesses, and I think a small disruption in the economy could be like, a death blow for them. So would they get bailed out again? I don't know. And I don't think they have the I don't think they have the management to compete with Tesla either way. If they got bailed out, what are they going to do? Because Teslas drive themselves, and so they're selling these self-driving robots. Um, they've got millions of these self-driving robots on the road right now, which can be activated once they complete full self-driving. It's like a flip of a switch. All these cars will be able to drive themselves, and and the cost of transportation decreases huge, and people are more likely to take an autonomous Tesla than they are um, go buy a car. Because what's the point? Why would you even get a driver's license anyway if the cars just drive themselves? And
Yeah.
Tesla has monopoly on all these cars, which I think they're going to have a monopoly on self-driving. It looks pretty apparent to me they're going to have a monopoly. They're going to own the market for at least 5 years.
Yeah.
Google, Ford, the Cruise unit, they're nowhere close. So, uh, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting time. The only saving grace I could see for them maybe is that they license the full self-driving technology from Tesla, just like they are with the supercharging. Um, but even then, they're just selling less profitable vehicles to compete with Tesla, which they're not going to win on margins because they have to purchase this license from Tesla. So yeah, I would never buy stock in like GM or Ford or something like that. I would probably short them if they didn't pay a dividend. So yeah, that's my prediction. I think that most likely they're not going to make it to the next recession. The business models are just too sensitive, and they'll either consolidate and or get bailed out by the Fed again, and they'll just be like maybe like a small niche companies like like I don't want to compare them like Ferrari, but like a low volume manufacturer of
Yeah.
vehicles. So yeah,
So
it's, it's,
so
it's
so you're not bullish on Ford. Do I hear that right?
no,
Yeah.
no, I am not bullish on
Yeah.
Ford.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the
That's
management.
yeah. And I'm willing to say here's the amazing thing. Here's the amazing thing. I'm willing to say you're very biased because you've experienced a 10 to 100x or whatever in Tesla stock. Oh, you own a lot of Tesla stock, whatever. You've had 10 years of information bias, whatever. But even if that's true, you just read these reports from traditional media saying that Tesla's the worst bet and GM and Ford are fine. And it's like it's just so clearly not. It's
Nuts.
like sure you might be
Yeah,
biased, but if they're actually claiming that these companies are on solid ground, why? Oh well, because most people don't have a desire for electric vehicles and don't use electric vehicles yet. To me, that's such a bogus belief because
yeah,
it's fundamentally in contradiction. It's fundamentally contradictory with what I was saying earlier that we have less to come with the future than the past. Oh, we should assume that these companies of the past will never be higher risk than this company in the future because people are still using the technology of the past. Will they ever
yeah,
upgrade? And to me, that's what I think that Tesla Motors has. I think that is the Achilles heel for these other companies. It's not Elon Musk. It's not the management. It's not the lack of debt. It's not the growing. Blah blah blah. The secret sauce is the technology, and all those other things are aiding of Tesla having the best tech. And to me, from my perspective, that's Tesla's slam dunk. That they have the best tech, and there is no second best. Obviously, I'm crossing my memes here, but to me, that's what it seems. When Ford and GM, when they are getting now into electric vehicles, following Tesla's footsteps, what technology are they using? They're using Tesla's superchargers. They're not using
mhm,
their own. That they are
yeah,
sending their own money to this competing
yeah,
company,
yeah,
and this what they're trying to grow in this market share, and they're actively feeding their competition now.
yeah,
And even if you're biased, like you're too much of a Tesla bull, it's just so clear that Wall Street is just not paying attention because they're so
yeah,
focused on the numbers and not the technology and understanding that technology begets monopolies.
yeah,
Bitcoin is incredible and it's incredibly important, which is why it means a lot that you're watching this video and you're taking the time. I do this because I believe it is a really, really important innovation that we've discovered a way to not have a single point of failure at global base layer money. See, fiat money, political currency units, and gold, all other forms of money up to this point in history have had a single point of failure. This has been the largest monetary problem in human history for the last 4,000 years. And now we have Bitcoin, and Bitcoin solves that single point of failure problem. And now, therefore, we have a new single point of failure problem, and that is how do we custody and store that Bitcoin properly for the long term in a safe and secure way that brings peace of mind. That's why I work at the Bitcoin Advisor. If you were to be hit by a bus, does your spouse, do your kids, do your loved ones and beneficiaries know how to access your Bitcoin? Do you have a proper self-custody storage method to where there is no single point of failure? Not from yourself, not from your seed device, not from where your seed phrase is stored. Have you considered these questions? Have you gotten your UTXOs managed? Do you have jurisdictional arbitrage? Have you considered all the trust, taxes, and estate planning requirements that are associated with becoming a high net worth person? Because if you are buying Bitcoin right now, you are going to become a high net worth person. Are you prepared for the amount of Bitcoin you have to skyrocket in value 2x, 5x, 10x, or 100x eventually? That's the time horizon you should have. And so you need to be preparing today for that future. How are you going to custody your Bitcoin? How are you going to leave that Bitcoin for your future generations? Because after all, that's what we do this for, right? You're buying Bitcoin for your kids. You're buying it for your grandkids. And so I highly recommend you start thinking in those long-term time periods now, because companies are coming, charities are coming, high net worth individuals are coming, and all of them are going to realize that having an allocation to a multi-sig collateral custody vault is going to be something that is of serious consideration for them. So once you understand Bitcoin is a beautiful innovation for not having a single point of failure at the base layer currency, now you have to start seriously considering, how do I have my custody stored where there is no single point of failure? Okay, if you want to learn more about that, please click the link in the description. I have dozens of pages of free educational content for you and videos. I'm happy to help in that free way. And then if you want individual help, I'm also happy to help you join the Bitcoin Advisor, where you can be an ongoing client. You can become one of my clients, and I'd be happy to help you in the years to come to make sure your Bitcoin's protected, to where no matter what, no matter if thieves or scammers or spammers or yourself or your family or whoever, no matter whether it's due to theft or loss, misallocation, misplacement, or just other mistakes, I'm happy to help you and be that voice of reason in the coming years ahead. So click the link in the description. I'd be happy to help. Check it out. Thanks.